Hey folks, Dustin Zarni here. Welcome to Commissioner in the Car. Sorry about the lighting, but it's dark out. And I got home a little late because early voting day 6 has just wrapped up. Today is October 30th. The hollow before Halloween. We just finished up day 6 of early voting. So I thought I'd talk about how early voting is going so far in the 2025 general election. Just some background, early voting. When I'm going to talk about early voting, I'm going to be talking about mail voting as well, because a portion of that is called early vote by mail now. We've talked about that several times. Early voting, in-person early voting started in New York in 2019. So it's kind of new. And so historically, we don't have a ton of data, just 6 elections, but really just 3 other elections that we should compare this year to see how it's going, because these are the much talked about local years, the odd years where congressional, gubernatorial, presidential elections are not on the ballot. Thus, they're not high turnout years. We usually have a turnout somewhere between 25 and 35%, with 37% being one of the highest turnouts. That was the 2017 mayoral election that we've seen in quite some time for a mayoral election. That is what I'm going to talk about when I'm comparing early voting. I'm going to be comparing it to 2019, 2021, and 2023. Okay. And a lot of this I've put onto my social feeds. And so if you see me looking down at a tablet, it's because I'm referring to that. But how are we doing? So as I said, we just finished day 6 of early voting. And so far we have had a total of 10,147 early voters come through in the first 6 days of early voting. That's actually pretty good. And why do I say that? Well, in the 6th day of early voting in 2019, we had just 5,128 voters. In 2021, the last mayoral election, we just had 5,559 voters. And in the largest local election year, where that means, the year that we're in now, for early voting anyways, was 2023. And at the 6-day mark, just 7,480 voters. So that 10,147 voters that we've had in the first 6 days, it represents about a 35.7% increase in, I'm going to give myself a little bit more light here. How about that? Is that a little better? Maybe. Anyways, a 35.7% increase from 2023, which did have the record of a little bit over 12,000 early voters. I expect us to break that. I expect us to break that on Saturday, maybe even tomorrow, and depending on how big tomorrow's thing is. But definitely Saturday, and then Sunday will be bonus. And we could see anywhere from 15 to 16,000 early voters during this during the 2025 election. Now, the election itself is, we just don't know what the regular turnout's going to be, right? Because there's a lot of factors that go into early voting. A lot of it's candidates, a lot of it's candidate driven, but races driven. But also we have a lot of different factors that go into it that have our voter turnout rate is affected, because we actually register more voters now than we did even a few years back. We're up to almost 314,000 registered voters here in Onondaga County. Right now it's 313,867. We've kind of reached our voter registration deadline, but that doesn't mean that's the final number, because we're actually decreasing voters as people die. As the Blue Oyster Cult song says, 20,000 people every day. Well, in Onondaga County, it's about 30 to 50 people every day that die and that we find out, and we take them off the rolls. I know that's a little, maybe a little morbid, maybe more information than you needed, but I'm always about trying to give you as much information as possible. So that number is going to go down. But because, we had so many voters, more people are registering to vote than ever before because it's so much easier. But that doesn't mean that they are voters that will always turn out for an election. Some of them will never turn out for an election. Some of them will only turn out in even years. So voter turnout actually goes down over time. And that's one of the reasons why, is because more people are registered to vote now than ever before. So when people look at the heyday back of the 80s and say, oh, well, they had 80% turnout. Well, that's because, a large segment of the population did not get turned out. So what I like to look at is obviously the raw numbers in early voting from year to year, which is looking great, but also the percentage of the early vote that will end up being the overall electorate. In the last couple of even years, we have seen up to 33% of the overall electorate, the people who choose to go out and vote early. But local years, it's around 15 to 20% because you tend to have more election day voters for whatever reason. I did skip over the mail voting because mail voting is also part of early voting now, because early voting is it is part of mail voting because we count those early votes before election day, and they're part of our election night totals. So right now, in returned ballots, we have, we sent out about 8,094 ballots this year, and only 3,650 have been returned. That's normal. That is not, right now we are in that mode where most of the ballots are going to start coming in. In fact, we're getting about 250 to 300 a day at the Board of Elections. So we expect that number to get up around 5,000 mail ballots will be in. Now, again, there's a certain segment of the population that are permanent absentees, but they don't always vote every election. And so, yes, we send out those mail ballots, but they don't always return them. If you're one of them, time to return them. Let's get them in. And if they get into us and received by Sunday, they will be part of our election night totals when we start scanning on Monday. But we won't release those totals till 8 o'clock. Actually, I'm sorry, 9 o'clock. We won't release them until 9 o'clock on Tuesday night. So at 8 o'clock, we can start compiling data. But even I won't know what that data is until 9 o'clock when we publish it. So that's also part of the early voting. So let's also take a look at what's happening out in the field right now. Let's dive into the early voting, in-person early voting, and see what's happening out in the field. Now, we have 10 sites in Onondaga County. The biggest site is the site that's always the biggest, and that's DeWitt Town Hall. That is always the biggest site. The reason for that is, it's just very popular. Unfortunately, my data on this, I'm going to have to be going off my top of my head because I don't have all the data that I wanted to have on this. So that's just the way it is. But the biggest site is DeWitt Town Hall. It has about 2,500 voters that have voted at it. And that's usually like the big site. That's the big site that everybody, not everybody, but the largest number of voters go to. That's usually followed by Claytown Hall and Camillus Fire Station. Those are number 2 and number 3, and they are number 2 and number 3 this year, getting around 1,500 voters apiece right now. Then we have, so those 3 we consider our bigger sites. Then we have our 4 middle sites. That's Armand Magnarelli Center in the city, OCC Mulroy Hall, Lysander Town Hall, and North Syracuse Community Center. Those 4 sites are considered like the middle sites. There are around 1,200 to 1,000 voters right now that have come to those sites. And each day it depends on which one of them is going to be number 4 in our list, because it depends on each day. And then we have our small sites after that. Beecham Library inside the city, Southwest Community Center, also inside the city, and then Lafayette Community Center in the southern tier. Those are the least used sites every year, and they always have around 500 voters right now. So that's the spread. Now, how is this shaping up in terms of partisan makeup? Well, about 49, a little bit over 49% of the people who have come out to vote are Democrats. And about 27% of the people who have come out to vote in the early voting in person are Republicans. And then about 21% of the people who have come out to vote in person are non-enrolled voters. So, and then the rest is spread amongst the various small parties, or the people who are in the other category. So that is typical. What we saw last year was a little different, though. Last year, in the 2024 general election, Republicans really targeted early voting, and Democrats still won that 39% to 30%, but but it was obviously much different than the numbers I just told you. And if you look at that about your registration in Onondaga County, the registration is 37% Democrat and 27% Republican. So right now, Republicans are coming out in about the same percentage as they're registered, and for early voting. And Democrats are punching well above their weight in their registration. They're registering about 37%, and they're almost close to 50% in the early voting turnout. The place that is way below the percentage out is the non-enrolled, and that's normal, because non-enrolled voters, although they make up 30% of the county, they tend to participate less in just about every election than the partisans. So they always have an underrepresented total in the vote totals. They're at about 21% in early voting. And these are about the same numbers, give or take a couple of percentage points, in the return vote by mail ballots as well. In fact, right now we have, let's see here, I have it right here on my handed end screen. Gotta find it. Okay. So of the returned mail ballots, we have 3,650 returned mail ballots. 1,837 are Democrat, and 974 are Republican. So it's about 2-1. Again, just like the early voting, and then 674 in the non-enrolled. So that's what's coming back in the mail. They're actually in our hands, and that kind of reflects the amount of requests that we've gotten from these as well. So Democrats tend to like to vote early. They like to vote by mail. They like to vote early, and part of that is the unfortunate demonization of alternative voting that the National Republican Party has made. So. And unfortunately, that has seeped down to their electorate. Now, this can all change, because we do have 3 days left of early voting. So let's see what happens in these next 3 days. Monday night, I'll be doing a special commissioner in the car. I've been doing these on Thursdays, and I think Thursdays actually works a little bit better for me in my personal life. And I'll probably continue Thursday commissioner in the cars going forward. But I'm going to do a special one on Monday night to talk about Election Day, and then I'll do another one next Thursday to kind of do a wrap-up of where we stand in the election. So that's my content schedule. I'm going to do a little bit more content than normal here to try to get you all the information. But let's talk about the next 3 days of early voting. Tomorrow, Halloween, yes, we have early voting. 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Those 3 days are the last 3 days to early vote. If you want to early vote by mail or do an absentee ballot, you have to do it either in person or sending down an agent to pick up your ballot at the Board of Elections. We no longer send out mail ballots. We had to stop that on Saturday. That's the law. Any ballot received by mail the application had to be received by Saturday. So no more. We won't be mailing out ballots anymore. You have to have somebody come down and pick it up, or you have to come down and pick it up yourself. The Board of Elections will be open when early voting is going and starting at 8:30 tomorrow until 6 p.m. So, and then of course open at 9 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday, and then 8:30 to 4:30 on Monday for your for your vote by mail needs. So you still have a lot of time on that. And then finally, election day is 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. You can go online at onvote.net. You can check your vote by mail applications. By the way, that's the only thing that we'll actually mail out right now is if you've already requested it and we've mailed you out a ballot, but for some reason you lost it or got lost in the mail, we will mail you out another ballot now. However, I have to be very clear. It may not make it to you in time because, the mail is slow. If you're local, it might make it to you. The day we get a request, we're sending it out that day. Then also but you still have the option to go to early vote by mail or early vote in person. And even if you requested a ballot, you can vote by affidavit at these stations. And you won't be able to vote on the machine, but your vote will count if you haven't returned a vote by mail. So you have those two options for you. Of course, if you haven't done that, you can do an early vote in person. And then on Monday at the Board of Elections, you can come down and do an early vote by mail or absentee vote. And then finally, on Election Day, there are court orders. And for people who aren't registered to vote, you can vote at any of your polling places. And by the way, if you get sick on Election Day, you're going to have somebody come down and talk to a judge and have them order a vote by mail because the law is very unclear about that. And we don't have agreement at the Board of Elections to issue those ballots. So only a judge can order us to issue those ballots. Oops, hello. I lost my lights here. So that's, I think, my cue to probably finish this up. My wife is waiting for me for dinner. So that's what we got. Onvote.net. You can check your vote by mail status. You can find out any of your early voting sites. You can find out your election day sites, 146 of them across the country, or across the county. Election day, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Tuesday. Early vote in person is 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. Plenty of time to get out there and choose your local leaders in this very crucial election. Bye-bye.